Hello everyone. I'd like to share with you in this video my trip last week as I record this on the 18th of November 2020 up to climb Mount Jackson and Mount Webster in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. This was a winter climb, and although I've done many climbs there in the White Mountains, this was probably the latest in the year, the most in the winter that I've done up to this elevation, up to a 4,000 footer, Mount Jackson, and a 52 with a view, which is Mount Webster. So here's what the White Mountains looks like, at least the presidential range part. On the upper right, you can see Mount Washington, trails, the Appalachian Trail going down towards Crawford Notch in the sort of southwest area of this map. And the hike I did was in Crawford Notch area, in this area where you can see here in this close-up. What I hoped to do on that November day was to go up the Webster-Jackson Trail from Crawford Notch, come up to the fork in the trail and take the Jackson branch of that trail on up to Mount Jackson, and then go across on the Webster Cliff Trail, which is coincident with the Appalachian Trail there, over to Mount Webster, and then drop back down the Webster branch of the Webster-Jackson Trail, back down to the trailhead. So, which is that was the plan. Didn't quite work out that way. So here I think I left the trailhead about 10 or 10:15, and very quickly, as you can see, it was icy and snowy. Not too much snow, but enough ice and snow to get out my trusty micro spikes and wore them the whole rest of the day. So about 10:30, I made the right turn to start going up and had that ice and snow there. A few minutes later, I came across a nice brook, I thought it was beautiful because the ice was on top of the water there, and you can see the snow coming down. So it had begun snowing at that point. It was around freezing, I think, maybe a little below freezing at this point in the hike. And as I said, I had my microspikes off as I went through this and kept them on the whole way. So it was about a half an hour later, or a little less than a half an hour from the trailhead, I reached the fork there where the Webster-Jackson Trail splits and goes to the left up towards Mount Jackson, the 4,000 footer, and to the right up to Mount Webster, the Webster branch and the Jackson branch. At this point, my plan, as I said, was to take the left turn, which I did, and go up to Mount Jackson. I had actually been in this place before, as you'll see later in the summertime. So I turned left, and on my way up, about halfway up that fork, you don't see a whole lot of wildlife in the White Mountains normally, and certainly not in the wintertime. But this beautiful bird, all sort of fluffed up for the cold, was very patient with me as I walked by, and I got a few good pictures of it. So at this point, I was about halfway up. More snow, as you can see, and you can notice that around that bird, you can see what the snow was on the left side of the trunk of the tree, meaning that it had been blown in the night before. So here I'm pretty close to the top. This is a view across the trees over towards Crawford Notch, where I had come from. I'm almost at the top of the mountain of Mount Jackson. And it's around noon. Few minutes later, I get very close now to the top of Mount Jackson. This is quite steep. You can see it's icy, ledgy, granite ledge here, quite icy. And you can't quite see it, but I had run into two hikers coming down, the only two people I had seen up to this point coming down, two women who were hiking together. They had gotten up to this point and actually up to the summit of Mount Jackson, and had wanted to turn left to go over to Mount Pierce, another 4,000 footer. But it was very windy and very cold, as I would soon see. And they turned around, and we crossed there about where that bird was. But at this point, my micro spikes were working fine, so I was able to continue on up this ledge, icy ledge, up to the top. And here is the intersection. This is the intersection of the Webster Cliff Trail and the Webster Jackson Trail. This is again looking back towards Crawford Notch. It's a little afternoon. And as I said, a couple of years before, in 2017, 2.5 years earlier, I had, 3.5 years earlier, I'd been in this exact same place. So here you can see on the right the photo from the 2nd of June of 2017. And on the left, that picture from last week. Quite a difference. Here I've arrived at the top of Mount Jackson. That's the rock cairn top, marking the summit of Mount Jackson, a 4,000 footer. It's a little bit after noon on that day, and it is really cold and really windy, very icy. But here I'm at the top. As I said, I had done this climb 3.5 years earlier. It's a different perspective, but it's the same rock cairn marking the top of Mount Jackson 3.5 years before. Here again, this is a view up towards towards Crawford Notch, up towards to the north. And so I stopped here. My idea was to turn right and go across on the Rupture Cliff Trail. It was so cold, as I think you can see. It's pretty cold and snowy and icy. So I, in fact, decided to turn around. I tried to go forward a little bit, as I had planned, and ended up on ledge that nobody had walked on. There were no footprints there. Wasn't sure that I would actually be able to find the trail, and it was very steep, so going down was going to be tricky. So what I decided to do there was to just have my lunch standing up. It was just too cold to sit down, and then go back down the way I had come up, and later down below make a decision on what I was going to do. But basically, at this point, it was so cold, I was shivering cold, and my idea was to just go on back to the trailhead. Didn't turn out to do that, but that was the idea. It was about 1:35 when I reached that junction again. Only took me about an hour to get back down, all that elevation back down to the junction, the fork in the Webster Jackson Trail. And since it was fairly early, even though this is middle of November and the days are short, it felt to me like I could give a try of turning left instead of going back on out to the trailhead. Turn left and go all the way back up to Mount Webster. So that's what I ended up doing. I felt okay. It was early enough. I had 3 hours of light, probably left. So I turned around and took a left. Before showing you that, here's that same place 3.5 years earlier, just about exactly the same aspect. You can see all the trees behind these signs look very, very similar by coincidence. So again, depicting the difference in the seasons in the White Mountains. Very soon after reaching that place, you come to what is called the Silver Cascade. And here again you see pictures, the very, very similar aspect of this waterfall, very close to that fork in the Webster Jackson Trail. And here's the short video that I took back in 2017, and the one I took last week, a little longer video showing the difference in the Silver Cascade in the winter season. So it only took me an hour to get up to the junction with Webster Cliff Trail. If you remember, my idea had been to hike up to Mount Jackson and turn right and come across to here, but I turned back around and decided to hike back up. As I said, it took me about an hour to reach the that intersection, and then just a few minutes later, getting to the top of Mount Webster with fantastic views. This is now up to the northeast towards Mount Washington, which you can almost see there with the snow on the top. Mount Eisenhower, Mount Monroe, Mount Pierce. Just a beautiful winter view of the presidential range. Again, here's a very similar, not quite the same, but quite similar view 3.5 years earlier. This is a view to the north. Off in the distance is the Bretton Woods area, now called the Mount Washington Hotel. It's the town of Bretton Woods. That hotel had been the site of all of the creation of the post-war architecture. The World Bank, the IMF, and so forth were all sort of designed at that hotel just after the end of the Second World War. So it's about 2:35, and I'm at the top of Mount Webster, one of the 52 with a view. And here's a nice video taken from that same spot. As you can hear, plenty of wind, very, very shivering, but you can see the snow coming down. But it felt like something I wanted to show. This is the top of Mount Webster. Certainly never came over to where I was. So I turned back around, and relatively quickly, I'm back down almost to the trailhead. I reach a very beautiful place called Buick Cliff that I walked over to close to the trail. And this is a view back down towards Crawford Notch. You can see the road, Route 302, down below the railway going over to the left. Mount Field, Mount Wiley, Mount Tom there across the notch, all 4,000 footers. So I ended up walking back to the trailhead here, back to the car. It had been a fantastic day, a beautiful day out in the winter. I had only run into two more people, two young men who had actually made the trip to the top. Going across Webster Cliff Trail. But this is what I ended up doing, going up to Mount Jackson there on the right above, and then doubling back all the way down and back up to Mount Webster and then back down. So it had been quite a wonderful day, really great to have done two of these mountains in one day, and probably my last winter hike for the season. It's now getting very, very cold, short days. If you'd like to see more about these hikes, I'll put these links in the notes down below. There are blogs about the 4,000 footers, all 48 that I've done, most of them more than once. The 52 with a view series that I've been doing since the coronavirus time, which are less crowded. And a year ago, a group of 4 friends and I were trekking in Nepal and got up to the Everest Base Camp. So there are links to those below. Thanks so much.